been advanced by the committee, and I do agree that those reasons are solid enough for this House to be moved to annul those regulations. The first reason given is lack of public participation. Public participation on these regulations were done in the year 2018. And Madam Speaker, if you live in this country, you know that the political environment and terrain in this country has changed significantly from 2018 to date. Perhaps even the aspirations of Kenyans have changed. Perhaps even the policy and focus of government has changed. In fact, it has changed significantly. In 2018, Madam Speaker, we were talking of the Big Four. And 2018, Madam Speaker, one very interesting thing is that Senator Boni Khalwale and I were riding on the top of a similar vehicle when we were welcoming Baba from the United States of America. And we were tear gassed, we were clobbered for 6 hours. When we got to Gikomba, Madam Speaker, the traders in Gikomba came out with the sticks and rungus and were generally very violent. Senator Boni Khalwale disappeared. I've not known to date how he got out of my car, but the situation was very tense. That was 2018. Today, Boni Khalwale is a chief whip of the government. And so the views given in 2018, really, Madam Speaker, we cannot use them to support or to augment regulations in the year 2025. Madam Speaker, we have moved full cycle from Big Four. We went to handshake. We went to Tanga regime. We got into a new government that started with bottom up. And then from bottom up, it was, after bottom up, it was, before it was shareholders. It was a government of shareholders. After becoming a government of shareholders, it then became a government whose, to whom the most urgent national priority was to eject the deputy president. And then after that, it became the government of broad base. And now, at least, the nation has stabilized. Madam Speaker, you cannot use public participation of 2018 to support regulations today. A lot of things have changed in this country. And in fact, Madam Speaker, to be honest, if, assuming the former deputy president was involved in public participation in 2018 in these regulations, do you think he will hold the same views that he held in 2018 today? Definitely not. And that is why public participation must be timely. It must be current. It must be relevant. It needs to be fresh. It needs to be like news. On that basis, Madam Speaker, I agree with the committee that these regulations must be annulled and should be rejected. The second basis is that when the regulations were published, the fees and tariffs were not included. And Madam Speaker, that is an extremely material feature or aspect of regulations that cannot be ignored. Because the Statutory Instruments Act has a very clear definition of what a statutory instrument is. And Madam Speaker, for avoidance of doubt, it talks about any rule, any order, any regulation, any direction, any form, any tariff of costs or fees. You cannot exclude tariff of costs and fees from such regulation and then give the Cabinet Secretary the power to impose that. Madam Speaker, we must remember that delegated legislation or statutory instruments, I think in the UK they call it secondary legislation. It is this Parliament that has donated the power that has been given to it by the people to the executive. Madam Speaker, sometimes, and this debate has been going on in the Commons, there's been concern about what is called skeleton legislation, where Parliament passes a framework, a skeleton, and then says the Cabinet Secretary shall prescribe regulations. We did that with the Health Acts. When we were in Turkana, Madam Speaker, we were in a rush because the President told us that something good was brewing and that if we passed the 4 Health Acts, then everyone was going to get free medication in this country. We are going to get free health insurance. And Madam Speaker, every time I sit in the committee, I chair of Public Accounts Committee, I see governors present their receiver of revenue statements. And they come and tell me they are proud that they've grown their own source revenue. And they have grown it from hospitals. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 hospitals. And I ask myself, if governors are making so much money out of hospitals, then where is this promise and dream of free and universal health coming from? I expect that in the next financial year, every governor would be reporting zero as fees collected from people in level 1, level 2, level 3, and perhaps even level 4 hospital. But look at all the counties, including my own county. We have grown our own source revenue beyond 1 billion Kenya shillings on the strength of hospital fees. Why are we still collecting money from the poor people? And yet we are supposed to be having one universal healthcare system and insurance in this republic. It's because we passed skeleton legislation. We were in a rush to get out of Turkana. We were in a rush to pass the legislation. And then we said the cabinet secretary shall prescribe and shall come up with regulations. Madam Speaker, I want to congratulate Senator Mofaya, who chairs this committee. And I keep reminding him that this is one of the most powerful committees of this House, because it ensures that that power that has been donated to the executive cannot be abused. It has been abused grossly in the past. I can give you a few examples, Madam Speaker. I've given the example of the Health Acts. We passed in this House the Fisheries Management and Development Act. That was in the year 2016. And it is one of the proudest laws. I just come into Parliament, and I was so proud that we are coming up with a regulatory and legislative framework that was going to open up our blue economy, and that was going to make our people rich, that was going to make our people benefit from the natural resources that have been put in the seas and the lakes and the oceans that we have around us. To date, Madam Speaker, you have regulations that have not been brought to this House. And as a result, the Fisheries Management and Development Act cannot be enforced. Indeed, Madam Speaker, it is an insult to the fisher folk in this country when we heard the other day that the Fish Marketing Authority and Kenya Fisheries Services are some of the state organizations that are bound to be disbanded because they are offering no value. Madam Speaker, when we came up with specific parastatals and bodies to support specific crops. For example, the Dairy Board supports the dairy sector. I've not heard anyone say the Dairy Board should be disbanded. The Coffee Board, the Tea Board. Madam Speaker, when Mwai Kibaki became president, the policy was consolidation. And we came up with one super agency called AFA, Agriculture, Food, Fisheries, and Livestock Authority. But along the way, it was clear that AFA did not have the capacity to deliver the changes and the dream that was in the strategy for revitalization of agriculture that was espoused by Mwai Kibaki. As a result, people started divesting. Fisheries divested, coffee divested, tea divested, dairy divested, even livestock. I believe there's a livestock bill before this House. Why should the other sectors divest? And then when it comes to our fish, we are being told that that is going to be too small a parastatal, and that parastatal, whatever it is doing, can be done by the ministry. If that is the case, then let's collapse everything else so that we are equal. Madam Speaker, the same absurdity extended to the Cotton Development Act. This House, this Parliament, passed the Cotton Development Bill, which was sponsored by Senator Betsy Yengo. Both houses agreed. The bill was sent to the President for assent. The President did not assent on time. And then 3 months later, as an afterthought, the President returned the bill back to Parliament with a memorandum. And what was the memorandum saying? That it is not government policy to establish additional boards, that the cotton development and management can be done by the line ministry. We don't hear the same argument when it comes to other crops and products. Madam Speaker, I hope that the Agriculture Committee, where I sit, has reported back to this House that the committee rejected the President's memorandum because they were filed outside time. So that what now we expect is gazettement of the Cotton Development Act and for its implementation so that cotton farmers can also be considered to be part of this republic, just the same way farmers of other crops and products have been given protection, have been given autonomy, have been given statutory independence. That is what we expect for cotton and we expect for fisheries. In this Parliament, Madam Speaker, you have seen regulations have been circulated to honorable members regarding the Parliamentary Service Commission constituency office regulations. Madam Speaker, that has been the biggest joke in this Parliament, that this Senate has failed to influence the publication of regulations that will ensure that the office of the Senate is treated slightly differently from the office of the Member of National Assembly. The reason why, and perhaps the public needs to know this, that a senator, like Senator of Nairobi, who has how many constituencies? Has 17 constituencies. The money that is sent to support the operations of the senator from Nairobi is the same amount of money that is sent to a single member constituency. And yet it takes care of 17 electoral units. I take care of 8, Madam Speaker. The resource, the budget, the envelope I have for staff and operations, and even office rent, can only keep me in one place. I cannot be present in all the 8 constituencies or all the 40 wards. Why? Because our hands are tied by that regulation that defined our offices as constituency offices. Madam Speaker, I have been in this argument from the 11th Parliament, when Kiraitu Murungi attempted to move an amendment to the Parliamentary Service Commission Act to establish alternative structures that would give specialized focus and attention to the Senate. It was killed in the 11th Parliament. In the 12th Parliament, we tried again. We even went to the United States of America, Madam Speaker. We visited about 5 states. We went through state legislatures to understand the relationship between state legislatures, to understand the relationship and operations of Congress and the House of Representatives. We came back with a report. Again, we proposed amendments to those regulations. They were again vetoed. They were actually vetoed by the other house, and that time, our late departed friend, the late senator for Baringo, the Honorable Cheptumo, was the chair of that committee. I am glad that before his demise, he had the decency and he had the courage to apologize in this house, because he said when he was on that side, he never understood what happened in the Senate. So, Madam Speaker, statutory instruments and delegated legislation has been used and has been abused, but people think that it is the laziness of representatives in these houses that leads to that abuse. That we are quick to pass a framework, or we are quick to pass a skeleton of a law, and then we leave it to the cabinet secretaries to fill the blanks. And some of them really abuse that. One of the abused statutory instruments was the Equalization Fund Management Regulations. Madam Speaker, those regulations came to this House at the end of the 12th Parliament. There was a lot of pressure. There was a handshake scenario. And then the chair of that committee was the senator from Mombasa, Senator Faki. And so Senator Faki had to convince the House to pass regulations that excluded senators from the Equalization Fund. And the regulations created structures at county level where the money from the Equalization Fund would be managed through a county technical committee chaired by the county commissioner, where the county government had only one representative, one CC. But the NGCDF also had a representative in that county technical committee. It went down to the constituency technical committee, all the way down to the ward technical committee. Today, many of us are unaware of what the Equalization Fund is doing in our respective areas. Even governors do not know what the Equalization Fund is doing. Why? Because the money is considered to be national government that is managed through national government administrative structures. And that is why yesterday we had this problem, where the National Assembly has come up with a parallel bill on the Equalization Fund, because they still think that that money is theirs, that money is for their control, but we allowed it to happen, Madam Speaker. I wish Senator Faki was here. He would have told us that he promised this House that let us pass these regulations to allow access to the fund, because the fund had not been drawn for a long time for lack of regulations. And he promised, and he told us here that the government had promised that we're going to bring amendments. To date, I do not think the amendments that have been brought. And so that is why we must annul these regulations, so that no one promises us that they'll be amended. They will never be amended out of experience. Madam Speaker, let me finalize by calling upon my colleagues that whatever we are doing here in this House is our primary responsibility as elected leaders. Madam Speaker, a poll was conducted in the United Kingdom to find out what the public expects of members of parliament. Lawmaking was like the last priority or the last expectation. If a similar poll was to be conducted here in Kenya, Madam Speaker, I can tell you that the people we represent, their expectation of a member of parliament, including senator and member of National Assembly, Expectation number 1 is to build classrooms. Expectation number 2, to issue bursaries. Number 3, to attend funerals. Number 4, to issue handouts without fail. Number 5 is to attend rallies where you can insult imaginary and real enemies. And number 5, 6 could be issuance of statements. Lawmaking is the least glamorous and is the least considered job of a member here. Madam Speaker, I see and I admire even the new members of this parliament. Senator Sifuna joined in this 13th parliament. He is here not just because he's a whip, but he believes that the core mandate, the critical duty of a legislator is to legislate, not empowerment rallies, even though I saw him doing an empowerment one the other day. But it is not the money that caught my attention. It was the conversation that caught my attention. But that's a story for another day. But he knows that being in this house is the reason why the people of Nairobi elected him. Madam Speaker, the senator from Nandi, he is in this house religiously, even though he's a bit of a noisy one, but he knows that that is the core mandate of a senator or a representative who has been brought here. Let me call upon my brothers and sisters who have been elected that at the end of the day, the funerals you contribute to, the handouts you give, they'll be like no one will remember them, Madam Speaker. Out of my experience, it is the last person to do a Harambe who is remembered. The Harambe you did in 2021, 2022, 2023. In 2026, your opponent will do a bigger Harambe. He'll come with Farouk to do a bigger Harambe. All your small Harambes will have been forgotten. But your record and active participation in Parliament will live on. Madam Speaker, today we went to do prayers for Phoebe Asio. And everyone reminds Phoebe Asio for the motion that she introduced in this House that called for gender equity, that called for opening up the space. People did not eulogize her because she did a Harambe somewhere and donated desks, or because she sorted out some boys in some center. People like Martin Shikuku are remembered for their speeches and statements in this House. People like George Anyona, it's not because of their donations. And so as we head into the weekend, and I know some of my colleagues are going to board choppers and are going for empowerment things, please, let us focus on policy, legislation, regulation that can provide a level playing field for all Kenyans to be able to access opportunities, for all Kenyans to get empowerment. The idea of donating 64 shillings to women groups or 1,000 shillings to women group is tokenism, is a handout culture. And Madam Speaker, the party that I subscribe to, the ODM party, has always been against using Harambe as a model for development, because Harambe fuels corruption. When someone whose salary at net is 150,000 is donating 5 million in 1 month, that is corruption looking at you straight in the eye. And Madam Speaker, we are not going to grow this country if we continue with this pretense of empowerment rallies and empowerment Harambes. That cannot be our model for development. Madam Speaker, I support yes.
Senator Kajwang, do you want to be informed?
Cautiously, yes. Very cautiously.
Madam Speaker, I want to inform my chair, Park, and I like his eloquence, that the ODM Secretary General, Senator Sifuna, donated 1 million in Saboti, Amis. So does it mean, if he says they don't subscribe, does it mean there is that there should be clarity on what he say?
Senator Kajwang.
Madam Speaker, that is a frivolous point of information. My Secretary General declared the source of his contribution. He declared, including members of this House, and so he fully accounted for it. Madam Speaker, with those many remarks, I support the report of the committee.
Senator Seki.
Thank you, very Honorable Speaker. I also take this opportunity